Hi, this is Sonnie Bailey from New Zealand Wealth and Risk Blog and Fairhaven Wealth. The purpose of this video is to give a really quick illustration of why retiring early is super expensive. So this video is really a complement to a video that I've just recently published about forecasting, and that's a very detailed sort of video that includes a number of assumptions, and I go into detail about how those this forecasting methodology or exercise works, including all of the various qualifications that I always give when I do a forecast. It's a forecast, not a forecast. The only guarantee I can give is it will be wrong, and despite that, it can still be a useful tool or exercise for getting an understanding of your trajectory, and probably even more importantly, some of the costs and benefits and trade-offs involved with some of the decisions that might be available to you. And the purpose of this video is to just really talk about the cost, I guess, or the trade-offs involved with retiring early. Now, the concept of retiring early, or FIRE, financial independence, retiring early, is very, very popular at the moment, and I can absolutely understand why that would be the case, and I personally feel a fair amount of affinity with that and a lot of the principles underlying FIRE, especially as it relates to being mindful about what really matters to you and spending money on the things that are most important to you, rather than just kind of being a consumerist sucker, as Mr. Money Mustache likes to talk about. But I do think one of the things that often isn't said enough is just how expensive the concept of retiring early can be. Because, I mean, retiring early, there's a double whammy involved with that. So I want to illustrate that with this video and this particular chart. So this chart here represents the financial trajectory of a hypothetical couple, John and Jane, who are 40 and 39 years old respectively. This horizontal axis relates to Jane's age over the course of what's hopefully a healthy, happy, long life. This blue line represents the value of their investment assets, excluding the value of their home and any lifestyle assets that they might have. Basically, investment assets that are there to sustain their lifestyle and help them live the life that they want. So this line is based on the opening balance of their investments over the course of time. Now, I've simplified this spreadsheet substantially compared to the spreadsheet in the previous video, because I'm really just wanting to talk about this one narrow set of variables. So basically, the opening balance of each year is the closing balance of the previous one, and in this spreadsheet, the closing balance is the opening balance plus investment returns. I made it straightforward, just 3% of what the opening balance is, plus any New Zealand super that they might be entitled to, and basically $16,000 per year from the age of 67, which is something that we can adjust, whether we want to assume nothing or we want to assume half. I'll stick with 16,000 at the age of 67. And then I've got two columns here, which we can kind of manually play around with. So basically, this column relates to earned income, which is basically what they're earning over the course of their working life. In this current scenario, they're working until John turns 65, so that's a variable here. And their household income is $80,000. And this column, this is their expenditure. And I'm basically, again, simplifying enormously. I'm assuming their expenditure stays constant over the course of their life. Obviously won't do that, but again, we're just focusing on one major set of variables here. So here, net savings is basically earned income minus expenditure. Over the course of their working life, it's $10,000 per year, and once they retire, it's minus $70,000 per year. So the closing balance, again, is just opening balance plus investment returns plus any New Zealand super plus any net savings or expenditure, and it's closing balance, which then informs the opening balance, which is what we see here. I've included some basic variables, you can change what returns they might get. As you can see, just even a 1% change in returns can be really quite substantial, and a good reason for making sure that you are invested in a way that's appropriate for you. But the real key set of variables here relates to the year of retirement. So 65, it's a bit of an arbitrary figure, kind of line in the sand that traditionally people often use, and is currently in New Zealand when people receive New Zealand Super. But we can play around with that. So we can see what the implications are if maybe they decide that they're going to retire a year earlier. And you can see even a year earlier, you can see what the impact is on the chart. So here they run out of money at 93. By working an extra year, they're basically able to sustain the same lifestyle for an additional 4 years. Because I guess the key here is that they're on top of earning income for an extra year, they're able to save, and they're not having to reach into their capital in the way that they otherwise would have to do that. An extra, make it from 65 to 63, 2 years. Difference again is pretty substantial. If they decide that they want to retire at the age of 60, you can see what the implication is. They're basically going to run out of money. Now, obviously, it's all about trade-offs. So in order to get to that point, maybe they are prepared to spend less over the course of their working life and in their retirement. And so perhaps instead of spending $70,000 per year, John and Jane decide that they'll spend $60,000. And that looks like it's something that they would be able to do. If they decided to work to 65, they probably end up with quite a bit. No, obviously, they'll be probably doing other things with their money, either for themselves or for their family. But again, we're just focusing on this one set of variables. If they could sustain that, retiring at the age of 55 versus 60 has a really substantial difference again. Now, the dream, I think, for a lot of people is to be able to retire not just early, but much earlier than 60, perhaps even at 50 or something of that nature. And that's a very attractive thing to do. But there may be things there may be compromises in terms of the lifestyle that you're able to sustain, or the lifestyle that you'll be able to enjoy. And again, there's no right or wrong here. It's all about decisions and what's right for you, not necessarily what's right for your friend, your family member, your neighbour or your colleague. We all need to go through life, and we all need to tread the path that works for us. But it is really prudent or worth just considering what trade-offs you're prepared to make. And on that note, I think one thing that's actually worth keeping in mind is that it doesn't have to be a dichotomy. It doesn't have to be a decision about whether or not about working completely or finishing work completely. You can choose to change your relationship with work. I mean, if you are wanting to retire early, maybe that might indicate that your relationship with work is such that you really don't enjoy it, or you don't get a lot of value out of it. Whereas maybe if you could find work where the key is that you enjoy it and you want to do it because you want to, not because you have to, that can make a real big difference in terms of the quality of your life, financial and otherwise. A, because you are enjoying the time that you're spending working, and B, because it probably means that you'll be able to more sustainably continue to work for that extra year or two more. And the other option, of course, is that you don't have to earn the same level of income over the course of your life. What you might be able to do is perhaps instead of retiring early completely at the age of 55, you might think about cutting down. So perhaps at that age, you work half what you were working previously, and maybe work for a little bit longer because it's more sustainable. And with that, that's a legitimate option where, yes, you're still having to eat into some of your income or the capital of your investment assets, but because you're still earning an income, it's not nearly as much as it would be if you were no longer working. And that can actually be a much more sustainable way of having something resembling retirement, or something that, while still living a life that might be more aligned with the lifestyle that you want to enjoy, or potentially earning less income in a sort of role that's more meaningful for you. So there we go. There's no right or wrong answer, and it certainly might be a legitimate decision for you that you want to work, perhaps even generate as much of an income as you can, save as much as you can while you are working, and play with the figures to work out how it is that you're able to sustain a decent quality of life over the course of a long retirement. The answer that's right for you is different to the answer that might be right for anybody else. But I think the key is to make these decisions not based on any arbitrary kind of rule of thumb or heuristic or what other people are telling you to do, but to try and make these decisions in an informed way that are based on a good understanding of what the trade-offs are, and also based on an understanding of who you are, what your values and your priorities are, and what your relationship with work is, and what you want it to be, and just more generally what you want your life to be about.